But without further ado, Max, why don't you kick us off talking about everything you hate about COVID-19 and sports?
Yeah, this segment has been building for quite a while now, and really there's two pet peeves for me about the actual in the game watching games, which we've been doing now for I get not the full 10 months, but ever since the NHL and NBA came back sometime August, I guess. There have been two things really on my mind that just constantly bother me. I guess one thing the whole time. So I'll start it off saying the fan noises. I don't understand why they have to put in the fake fan noises. That I don't get any value out of it. Every time I hear them, it in hockey, whether it's on like a goalie robbing a player, whether it's after a goal, the end of a game, they just seem to put those in. With basketball, it bothers me even more because they throw them more like when someone's taking foul shots. I was catching a Denver Nuggets Utah Jazz game a couple weeks ago, and when players were shooting air balls, they were throwing in fans faking the air ball chants. I don't understand what value it adds. It seems so unnecessary to me, so superfluous, and I hate it. And I think the hatred of that is really what spawned me wanting to do this segment.
Yeah, in terms of fan noises, I completely agree. The bubble was a surreal experience for the NBA and the NHL, and having that kind of background crowd hum. I don't mind actually the baseline noise level, just to kind of give you that sense of familiarity with the game. But I do really love listening to the players chatter and the stuff that gets said. Obviously, they might have to run it a couple like on a bit of a tape delay and maybe bleep out anything for kids who would be watching, but I love hearing the communication that goes on and a little bit of the trash talk. Like when the Clippers and Lakers were playing, it'd be the guys on the bench just yapping their mouths off the whole time to players on the court, and when someone makes a big shot they turn to the bench and say something. I loved all that little interplay. It was fantastic. But I think the sport where it's the most important, uh, basketball, hockey, baseball, whatever, but football seems to be the one where you kind of have to have fan noise because it's such an important factor in deciding games. NFL home field advantage is probably the most pronounced in any of the sports because they only play once a week, and because the stadiums are so much bigger and noisier, and they're designed to enhance sound, and so they need that fan noise to be at a certain level just so that when the opposing team is on offense, it disrupts them somewhat because you want to recreate that kind of home field advantage of the loudness of the crowd. It doesn't necessarily have to be loud on your TV and those like superfluous noises that you talk about. But I think for football, it's necessary to have a certain level. I think they capped it at 70 decibels, just in order to recreate that advantage that teams have from playing at home.
I remember I was catching the one of the first playoffs NFL games, and they were listing off an interview they'd done with Josh Allen, I think. It was the Bills game. I can't remember if it was Josh Allen or the opposing quarterback, but he was talking about that, and he was saying like, "No, it's so strange to be playing these games, and I'm not shouting at the top of my lungs to like run an audible or make the adjustments on the line of scrimmage." So I guess first of all, I don't think that effect has been achieved. And then second of all, like one of the, I guess, silver linings of COVID has been like some of the things they've tried that I quite like in sports, like in the NBA. I love, we've talked about this, the 9 and 10 seeds for the playoffs that they're doing. I love the Canadian division in the NHL, which we're going to get into later. I've loved hearing the UFC, like every punch, every kick, you hear so much crisper. The corner instructions, you hear so much. Like, my opinion is in this different environment, just run with it, see what happens. I mean, I want to know how significant home field advantage is in football. Like, does it make as much of a difference as we think? Here's our opportunity to find out. Does having fans boo and do as much as they can to disrupt foul shots in the NBA make a difference? Let's find out. Like, we don't have to stick to this old system and recreate it just for the sake of recreating it. Like, we know we'll get back there one day, so why not see run the scientific method? Like, let's remove a variable and see if there's any differences. I mean, maybe it's not exactly scientific because you've got more than one variable, but I don't buy into that.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think this year the NFL had the best road record they've ever seen. Like the most road teams won and covered the spread that they've ever seen in their history, which makes sense. And I think it really does show the importance of home field advantage in the NFL. Uh, yeah, I agree. It's definitely a different environment, and you can never recreate having fans. Like imagine that Kawhi shot happening in a bubble. It's just not the same. It's not the same. Those moments are made because of the fan reaction that happens. The explosion of Scotiabank Arena or Oracle Arena when the Warriors were at their peak, or that Ray Allen shot, right? Those are basketball examples, but the fans add so much to that experience, and they can't be recreated by sounds played over a speaker. And so leverage what people are loving about the lack of fans. And I think, yeah, that would be a qualm that we have that we'd want to see done. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Absolutely. Why they do extreme levels of testing. Players are tested almost every day. When like the player's cousin's brother's girlfriend who ran on the street tests positive for COVID, the whole team isn't allowed to play that night. They're on top of testing as much as they can be. Why the hell do coaches have to wear masks? It The players on the court don't have to wear masks. The refs, like, making the coaches wear masks in the NBA and in the NHL is really just an excuse for the refs to go, "Oh, what's that? I can't hear you." And then when the coaches pull their mask down, pull your mask back up. That's all it is, like an excuse for the ref. It seems it, I thought we have our show notes here. I thought I had coaches wearing masks. I don't know if you adjusted that to half wearing masks.
Yeah, I did, because I agree. Like what I see is I see coaches in the NFL everywhere. It's either they're fully wearing it, or it's covering their mouth, or it's sitting on their chin, or they've got it hanging from an ear. Like it's there, but they're not wearing it,
No.
because why would they if they're being tested every day and all the things that are happening? They have them all. Like I understand the science of it, and it reduces the risk, but it reduces the risk so minimally when you have guys running, like high-fiving them as they come off to the bench and sweating all over each other when they're playing in the game. And it's just there's way too many things happening in a sporting environment where them like having the mask over their mouth or wherever they have it, it's just you might as well just not wear it.
Yeah, the risk it's reducing is that in between, whenever the coach got tested, like that day or the day before, that test being like, say, a false negative, or them catching COVID in between the test showing negative and them showing up to the arena, them somehow not spreading it to the players like before, which is unlikely. And then, yeah, it's not, there's, I can't really imagine a scenario where where the coach has COVID, somehow not picked up by the tests, and the mask saves the players from getting it. And yeah, anytime the coach wants to actually speak to the team, they have to pull the mask down anyway. It's silly. And I don't know if you have anything more to say on that, or I should just transition to the next one.
Let's move it along. What else you got for me?
Yeah, last one. This one is NHL specific, and you can kind of springboard your fourth point off it. But speaking of testing or protocols that don't make any sense around the tests, we have to talk about that Alexander Ovechkin suspension and the fine that got hit on the Washington Capitals. If you are a fan of other sports other than hockey and you're not familiar with this story, essentially the Washington Capitals, while on a road trip, there are four Russian-born players. I'm can't remember all their names off the top of my head, but Ovechkin, the captain, and Kuznetsov. I don't know if you remember the other two.
Uh, Backstrom maybe, and
No,
yeah,
they were all Russian.
no, yeah,
So
I don't got it.
they, at a hotel room, like on the road, went and hung out in one player's room, and they all had to be suspended, weren't allowed to play, and the Washington Capitals had to take a big fine for it. The idea behind that being that maybe, just maybe, one of those players like caught COVID while on the road, or like in between games, in between practices. And like, yeah, it's fine to have these players on the bench together. Yeah, it's fine to have these players in the dressing room together. Yeah, it's fine to have these players at practice together. But no, it's not fine for them to like off the ice hang out together. I hate it. Like, it's so draconian, and it's the chance, just like the coach thing, in my opinion, the chance of having a COVID spread from something like that is so minimal that this just seems like cruel and unnecessary punishment to me.
Yeah, and that's where I'll springboard right into my point. Is it's such an important thing to talk about, is that how COVID has affected everyone and their mental health. It's something that I have to do a presentation on this week, and it's something that is definitely affecting these players. And although those back home can say that these are millionaires who are paid to play the sport that they love, and we're all doing it, why do they complain? But they do it because they have a platform where people can hear them, and that's why they share it. And second of all, you can stay at home with your family and loved ones, or maybe you have people that you go and see like outside for a walk, whatever you do. These players are stuck in a hotel room by themselves for 24, 48 hours, 72 hours while they wait for their next game, and they can't leave that room, that little box. So what I would say is the NBA wants to, or who, NBA, NHL, MLB, whatever, they want to discourage their players from going out into the cities and putting themselves at risk, then allow them to spend time with their teammates in the hotel outside of, so that way they can hang out with their teammates, and that disincentivizes them from trying to sneak out and go other places, because you're lowering that risk. They're all around each other anyways. So if that's where they're staying and only interacting with those same teammates in a hotel environment, then it's going to have a much lower risk, and it just makes more sense. They have to figure out ways to keep these players entertained and content, because otherwise it's going to have a very significant impact on their performance, which is going to hurt the product of the leagues. So that's just the last thing that I wanted to say. There's a lot of things that we hate about this and that everyone hates about this that we've litigated on and off for over 10 months now. But it was something that had to be said and discussed, because, yeah, some of these things are just silly. And the biggest thing we're looking for is consistency, right? It's a very fluid situation, but if you're going to have a policy, then you have to stick to it. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm looking for is thoughtful and meaningful policy. And this, the coaches wearing masks on the court, on the ice, and this ban to the Capitals players, or suspension to the Capitals players, who like probably either like 8 hours before or 12 hours later were about to be in the same dressing room and like sharing a practice ice together anyway. What they both have in common is just trying to look good and posture like, yes, we're taking COVID very seriously, while I guess the coaching one isn't harmful to mental health. It's just harmful to the coach's vocal cords. But as you said very well, this forcing players into a hotel room for like hours on end with not being allowed any human contact when they're like fellow countrymen. In the Russians case, like, I don't Ovechkin has pretty good English these days, but not all of the players do. And some of the newer ones are fresh from Russia, like 3, 4 years later. And the NHL is a very diverse league. This is going to be true of the Swedes, of the Danes, of German players. Just there's no reason for it, and it's harmful to their mental health. like, it's not, consistency almost doesn't seem like the right word for me, because like you said, it is fluid and what we know about COVID is changing. But let's make policy based on what we know about COVID and structured around testing and structured around preventing COVID, not around looking good about COVID.
Very well said. Uh, that is all for this uh, topic. We wanted to have it said. We're going to take a quick break and then get into the sports.